Hi, everybody. Welcome to a podcast for all seasons. This is episode 5 of season 3. I am Eric Joseph, and this is one of those rare instances, I believe only the 4th time ever. I'm doing this without my co-host Josh Mundy, who is unfortunately ill today. So this episode will be on my YouTube channel that's been dormant for over a year, because usually it's Josh hosting these deals, but as you can see from the title of our episode, our main topic is going to be superhero movies should take risks, and that's, we're going to delve into that in detail in a matter of minutes. But first, I would like to introduce a returning guest to this show. Some of you may remember him from last fall, in which we discussed at length his independent comic book, Staunch Ambition. It's a supernatural science thriller, and we also reviewed Avengers Age of Ultron in that episode, and we dubbed it one of our best of 2015. So if you haven't heard that episode, I recommend going back and listening to it. So before we start talking about his book and a Kickstarter campaign he's launched, please welcome back to the show, Mr. Brian E. Lau.
Hey, how you doing, man?
I'm doing all right. How have the last few months treated you?
I'm having a nervous breakdown. Doing a Kickstarter. My first Kickstarter is. I knew it was going to be challenging, and it's intense, all or nothing, timed, and being new to it. So it's exciting at the same time as scaring the crap out of me. But it's fun. I'm working my butt off on it.
Yeah, I see on Facebook and Twitter you've been making share of fans at cons and stuff.
Yes, yeah, the conventions. I decided to do the preview issue, which I think you're familiar with, and then
Yeah,
I just independent, don't want to come out cold with issue 1. So yeah, that helped. It's nice to get out there, talk to people, and there's a lot of choices for your time and entertainment and every media. So I think it was necessary, and I've been able to get a lot of good feedback. It's quite. I'm still getting used to that. When you get people like fan mail or, hey, I'm waiting for issue 1. And so I'm like, oh, wow, that's awesome.
well, I will say, to your credit, I think your book might be the only independent, like self-published book I've ever bought at a con.
Oh, really? Wow. I'm honored.
Yeah, because when you go to cons, there's just so much to catch your eye, and it's an easy place to drop money.
Yeah.
And yeah, so you pick and choose where you go, but also I think it was fortunate we got to meet at a smaller con, because you said you were at Motor City Comic Con last year, right?
Oh yeah, yep, love that convention.
And you have this big, brilliantly colored banner, and I didn't even see you there.
Oh really? Yeah. I mean, and have you been to C2E2?
No, hopefully I can go next year, but I've never been to an out-of-state con.
Oh, I'll tell you, I've been to C2E2 the last 2 years, and Artist Alley is just, it takes literally 1 day to get through it. Full day you can go through. So yeah, there's a lot of different artists doing and stuff, and so trying to stick out. And I've really, that banner was something that I did a lot of research on and try to do a design that just encapsulates comic books and the quality of art we're doing here.
Yeah, that artwork, I always enjoy showing it off, because recently, even though we're going to give you a chance to plug it a bit, I did an article on Dark Knight News about a week or 2 ago about your Kickstarter campaign, and I included some preview images, and I thought it was kind of cool to see people sharing it around Facebook and such that weren't even familiar with your material.
Awesome. Yeah, it was good choice that you put the banner on there. I have that on a shirt. I also use it as a flyer, so it all kind of I'm using it a bit because I think the design does work. So
Yeah, like I said, C2E2. It's Chicago's. It's far, but it's not too far from Detroit. I mean, it's not like going to New York Comic Con or San Diego, both of which I hope to go to one day, because as a geek, you have to go to the two biggest ones at some point in your life.
yeah, the next
Um,
biggest one, I think the closest next biggest one I would say is probably C2E2, and yeah, it's worth going, definitely.
yeah, what's funny is Motor City Comic Con is, I think it's actually in the top 10 or 12 most attended in North America now, at least for Comic Cons. So,
Well, I don't
uh,
know about you, but I've been going to Motor City since it was back in the day when it was at the Dearborn Civic Center, and I had did a couple, did colored a couple covers for an independent company called Hall of Heroes, a comic book called Vortex, and I'm talking back in the day. So like Motor City is nostalgic for me, and has grown from the Dearborn Civic Center to what is it? What is it at now? I forget the name of the.
Suburban Collection Showplace.
Right, beautiful,
No,
huge.
yeah, it's a great con. Motor City Comic Con 2012 was actually the first con I ever attended, and it's pretty much my favorite weekend of the year. But I guess I'll give a plug to Midwest Media Expo, which is going to be next weekend, April 15th through 17th at the Dearborn Royal in Dearborn, Michigan. Dearborn Royal Hotel, I should say, formerly the Adoba, formerly the Hyatt. Some people will know it as the former home of Detroit Fanfare. And
Right.
last year the con was at the Renaissance Center downtown. And while Dearborn's closer, it's just and easier to navigate than downtown Detroit. I liked that vertical setup in the Ren-Sen and just how it felt like such a different experience. And then you go down to the food court and everyone's in a costume. I just I love that. That was one of my favorite days of
when is this one coming up in Dearborn?
next weekend, 15th through
Oh,
17th.
this weekend.
Yeah, and before we went on the air, we were talking about Greg Wiseman, and I was saying he was going to be there. So I'm thinking about getting some Young Justice DVDs signed.
Nice. I
Maybe
might
I'll
try to make it to that.
maybe I'll even be able to land an interview. But yeah, Josh and I,
That'd
and
be
then
awesome.
my friend Alex is going to be a photographer. We're going to be covering it for Dark Knight News, and Josh will be covering it for DC Comics News, our sister site. So, yeah, I should, if all goes according to plan, I'll be there all 3 days. Josh will hopefully be there 2 of them, but
Is
yeah,
Greg Wiseman like one of the big guests, or is there quite a few of them?
yeah, Jeffrey Combs, the Reanimator, and
Oh, yeah.
other people may know him as Scarecrow from the new Batman Adventures from the late 90s, which was like the revamp episodes of Batman the Animated Series. He also did a few episodes of Gotham during season 1. He was Dr. Vanakit in House on Haunted Hill, so I'm thinking of taking a VHS copy of that movie for him to sign. So who really ever sees VHS copies being brought up for autographs? Um,
Yeah.
there's a there's a few others there. It's very much a media expo. It's not focused on any one area of geekdom. Because it's the sister convention of UmaCon, which people know is to be a more anime centric convention. But I went to Midwest Media Expo last year, and it's not necessarily a comic con. It's just it's many things. And I'll just say, look at their posted schedule, because celebrities only do signings at set times. It's not like they're at a table all day like at Motor City Comic Con.
Oh,
Um,
okay.
that I think, for example, Greg Wiseman and Jeffrey Combs they're going to be at the same signing session, but it's at like 4 p.m. on Saturday or something. They'll be doing panels too, but the convention has like this free autograph policy, but I think if it's the same as last year, I believe you get two things autographed for free, then you have to pay, and then for prints they have those are something you have to pay for. So
So this
I'll
is this the Midwest you said media?
yeah, Midwest Media Expo.
Oh, okay, sweet. I just pulled it up here, so I'm gonna check that out because I just love Greg Wiseman. Spider-Man is hate to bring up the opposite of DC, but Spider-Man is one of my favorite characters.
Yeah, are you talking the Spectacular Spider-Man, which was just
Oh
such
my
an awesome
gosh.
cartoon?
Well, the funny thing is I always loved Spider-Man growing up, but I can't think of any cartoon of Spider-Man that ever intrigued me. I mean, yeah, it was cool, it's Spider-Man, but it wasn't like, wow, I was I was invested into it. But Spectacular Spider-Man was both funny and it man is so I'm so upset that he didn't get to finish what he was doing because I could see what he was doing. He was doing the real Spider-Man story.
Yeah,
Gwen
yeah,
Stacy, not with how the movies did it with or at least the first three movies with Mary Jane.
yeah. I liked Ultimate Spider-Man for the first season, but after then it just I
Yeah,
I could I
too hokey.
yeah. Yeah,
No.
Spectacular Spider-Man, and I'm saying this as someone, I'm not necessarily a big fan of Spider-Man, but like all of us, we'll pretty much check out anything with a superhero in it. But I just remember tuning in to Spectacular Spider-Man on Saturday mornings, and this is when it was on originally on the CW, and I thought it was such a great, enjoyable series that it had me watching week to week.
Right. Yeah, it was
But
good. It was solid. Every aspect of it was really well done. It wasn't just hokey. It had a deep it had the deep stories going with the characters and their motivations. So
yeah, I also like the fact that his rogues gallery was like a organized crimes response to him. Like the villains were built around him. I thought that was a cool take, but
yeah, that's a good
not
point.
to get too off track because we're going to be talking Motor City Comic Con in a minute. Would you like to, as we said, we're not going to repeat ourselves because we talked about it for a half hour last time, but we're not going to take for granted that people heard the last episode you were on. But in like about a minute or two nutshell, would you like to describe Staunch Ambition for our listeners and then plug the Kickstarter campaign, which if you're listening to this on Dark Knight News, DC Comics News, or Multiverse Entertainment, we will once again provide a link to his Kickstarter page so you can check it out. But go ahead and tell them, Brian.
Yeah, so I have issue one, and it's kickstarted now. So Staunch Ambition is you had given a basic idea of a supernatural fiction dealing with what could take place in our future. So the overall arc story is the concept of we have the first enlightenment with the scientific age and technology advancing through scientific and advancement. And then through technology, mankind enters into the thought dimension, into the supernatural. And so the story's overall idea is what is the implication of man with advanced technology entering into this new enlightenment, which is the supernatural. And then, of course, it also deals with some of the main characters. I have a female character named Riel, who is one of the lead supervisors on a space station in the story. And then we have Azarus, who is a genetically engineered worker clone, which is a genetically engineered mix between human and animal DNA. So we're going to get into some of the questions of what does it mean to be animal or human, or that these worker clones are made with no sexual organs. So, to control them and to where they won't colonize or whatnot. And so the questions that Azure starts asking is, what does it mean, or deals with is, am I human, animal, male, female? And then the last hook is the Staunch Industries, which is the title of the book, Staunch Ambition. They built the Ambition, which is the space station that the story takes place on, starts on. And what is the secret behind this Staunch Industries success? So,
And about your Kickstarter?
Right, right. The Kickstarter is live right now, so you're probably posting this relatively soon.
Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
it'll be up tonight.
Yeah, so the Kickstarter, I spent about a good 3 months studying, researching, and working on that. So, just I spent that much time on it. If you could just, if anybody's interested, just give it a look, see if it's something that's worthwhile or intriguing. I have exclusive copies that you can only get through the Kickstarter. So I have an extra size edition with a variant cover that is only going to go to the people that who select that reward on Kickstarter. And I have a guest. I have a artist that's going to be doing an original sketch. I have where you can be in the book. I have the 28-page first issue. So I have a lot of different tiers going on here to help print issue 1 and to also continue the production costs for issues to come.
And you've had some decently big names contributing covers to this and stuff. Would you like to tell people about them?
Right. We got the cover to issue 1 is done by Freddie Williams, who is just, I think, wrapping up um, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle Batman crossover
Yeah,
for DC IDW. What's that?
yeah, I've reviewed the first 4 issues. I believe issue number 5 comes out next week, and I don't think I've given any issue of that series below an 8 or 9. I think I've given it 2 10s. Now
Nice. Yeah.
that's an incredible series. Yeah, and Freddie, just his artwork is perfect in it.
Oh my gosh, and his cover. I mean, yeah, I'm looking at the art on those books, and like, well, the thing is, Freddie is a huge Turtles fan, so he is into this, and you can tell by the art. And he did my cover to my first issue, and just, you have your favorite artists, but they could do hundreds of covers, and not all of them are gonna have that great classic hook look that you don't get tired of looking at. And it may be good, but it just doesn't have that where it just pulls you in every time. But this cover he did is I couldn't be happier. It's just beautiful, and so I put colors to that. So I'm happy to have him on board. And Koi Fam did a cover for me for the preview issue as well. And Tyler Thal is my main artist, who is a concept artist for Sony PlayStation games. So yeah, the art is beyond your typical comic book. It's in the vein of concept design art for like a video game.
Yeah, because that's what I noticed. Maybe that's one of the things that helped me contribute to buying your comic book on the spot when I met you was, when you see a lot of these, self-produced comics, you can tell it's like maybe 1 or 2 guys and the art's a little rough. And no, it's pretty eye-popping and damn near photorealistic at times. And
In fact, I
um,
don't tell people this much. I mean, I say it sometimes, but it's simply because of the style. It's like full paints, but because of the colors we use, a lot of blues and reds. It actually is 3D. You put some 3D glasses up to it, man, and it's like legit 3D. And I don't want to sell it that way because I don't want people to think it's a gimmick. It just happens to be that way because it's our color palette happened to be blues and reds a lot.
yeah, I'll have to give that a look.
Oh yeah, it's cool.
Yeah, yeah, I was going to say that. I don't know if you've been keeping with it issue to issue, but definitely when it comes out in trade, check out Batman Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, because James Tynion, who writes it, just writes every character perfectly in that book and plays them off each other well. And the way he uses villains from both Batman and the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, everything just makes sense.
Cool. Yeah, I
It's
have the issues here. I'm gonna get to those as soon as like Kickstarter is just Kickstarter. They call it Kickstarter because it kicks your. I don't know if I want to. We don't want to say any. It kicks you in the rear end, man. So when I get through this, maybe I can enjoy life again.
yeah. And that's how I was telling you before we went on there. The reverse is kind of true for me because I get so many comic books for review. Sometimes I just I don't have the time to play video games or do other things. And I mean, I go out at night and stuff. Like I go to some nightclubs in the area and stuff and get together with friends. But it's like, yeah, during the day, it's just I just don't have time for much else aside from my journalism. But yeah, Motor City Comic Con, for those of you in the Metro Detroit area, will be at the Suburban. Let's try that again. The Suburban Collection Show Place in
You got
Novi, Michigan. I believe it's May 13th through 15th this year.
yeah.
And Brian will be there with his impressive banner selling his wares to you. And would you like to, again, just talk about what you're bringing to Motor City Comic Con and a
Well,
message for
I timed my Kickstarter so that it would end 2 weeks before Motor City, so I could give the printing company time to print it. So I plan on being successful with the Kickstarter, but that is not that's easier said than done. But it's going well, and the Kickstarter is doing great for all the research I did. So I'm on track to go past the goal, but that's only if it continues to get funds, because the middle part is turns very dry. So as things go, if things go the way I plan, I'll have issue 1 will be printed and premiering also at Motor City. But like I said, the Kickstarter exclusive is only going to be offered through Kickstarter. So yeah, Motor City, I'm looking forward to it. Motor City is supporting me in many ways and helping me out. So they're not only my favorite convention, but they're good friends of mine. So
yeah, and we'll obviously be stopping by your table.
sure.
Say hello. Yeah, because if we don't, you're gonna like say, where the hell were Eric and Josh?
Yeah. I'll be walking the aisles looking for you.
Yeah, if you don't see me, I might have you open up like an envelope to be opened in the event of my disappearance or something. Um,
Exactly. Yeah. If you're
but
reading
yeah,
this, then such and such happened. Yeah.
yeah, that's really shaping up to be a great con. I'm looking forward to it. Just haven't worked out. I mean, I'll be there Saturday for sure, as I am every year, but I'm hoping to be there for at least Sunday as well. I've never been there on a Friday.
Hmm. Yeah. Well, some people go Friday because it's slower, but Saturdays when you got all the stuff happening.
Yeah,
Most of
that's
it.
why I go. And as usual, on Saturdays, I load up a backpack full of comic books because that's how I spend my first few hours. I just go around getting comic books signed.
Nice.
Anyway, you think it's about time to go into the main topic?
Yeah. Let's do it.
All right, I guess I'll lead us off here. And as we know, we are in what is being called the golden age of superhero movies and things. We've gone to from a time where we had the Adam West Batman TV show, the Incredible Hulk show with Lou Ferrigno and Bill Bixby, to Wonder Woman with Linda Carter, and then eventually things launching on the big screen with Christopher Reeve as Superman, to Tim Burton's Batman with Michael Keaton. And things eventually went in baby steps to the point where we had Blade in the late 90s, who kind of proved that guys outside Batman and Superman could play in the big leagues, and even with an R rating on it. Um, I
Mask
guess,
was another good comic book movie.
which one?
Mask.
Yeah. And then before we get too far down the line, I will say I think Brian mentioned this on the last episode, maybe on the air, but he did say it. He remembers a time. I was just a small child when this movie came out, but he said, looking back, you remember when Howard the Duck was in theaters, and you just had to appreciate that even that existed.
Was hard to do.
Yeah. And not to get sidetracked, I remember like 6-7 years ago, some friends and we were doing a movie marathon, just picking things up off on demand, and a friend of mine was really hating us because his girlfriend picked Howard the Duck.
Oh,
And
no. Why?
then I picked Mannequin 2.
No,
Yeah.
not Mannequin 1, Mannequin 2.
Yeah.
I don't think I've even seen the second one.
Oh, I can't say it's great, but if you're in it for the camp fodder, I guess, check it out at least once. But
Yeah.
that's the movie I always remember because I think I've seen 2 way more than I've seen the first one.
Wow.
And then eventually we had Bryan Singer's X-Men, then Sam Raimi's Spider-Man, and then things kicked into high gear when Batman Begins came along in 2005 and rejuvenated the Batman franchise and put this serious spin on the genre. And that was also one of the movies that got me back into reading comic books on a regular basis. The other was Sin City that year as well. But eventually we had The Dark Knight in 2008, which is this pop culture phenomenon. But 2008 was one of the best years for comic book movies because we also had Iron Man, which I say still is among the cream of the crop when it comes to comic book movies, and launched this cinematic universe for Marvel and breathed new life into Robert Downey Jr.'s career, saved Marvel because they had everything riding on that movie. And
bold move, paid off.
Yeah, and before that movie, Iron Man was really only known to people who read comic books, and now he's a household name. And also, The Incredible Hulk came out that year with Edward Norton, and I still say that's an incredibly underrated, underappreciated movie.
You're talking about the first Hulk?
No, that was the first one was Hulk by Ang Lee in 2003, which I hated.
Yes, I hated it as well.
Yeah, The Incredible Hulk, I thought.
Yes, good movie.
Was just more dramatic, and I just think Leterrier he shot that movie so beautifully. The cinematography is incredible, and
the Bruce Banner story was just it resonated so well. I mean, I had a couple problems with the movie, but I tell you what, the old Hulk TV show was part of my childhood, and this movie tapped into that feel of the TV show with Bill Bixby. I think Bill Bixby.
Yeah. Did you ever get to meet Lou Ferrigno?
Oh yeah. A couple times. He used to always be at Motor City.
Yeah, I've met him twice already. He's a pretty nice guy.
Yeah. Impressive guy.
First time I met him, he had like a bicep injury or something. Were you there when he had his arm in a sling?
I think I saw that. I didn't talk to him that time, but
yeah. Because I met him 2013 and 2015 there.
He got injured by curling like a bus or something.
I don't know, but yeah, the guy's what, in his 60s now, and
yeah, he can kick like everybody's butt at the con.
Yeah, he's still ripped. I give him credit, and for still going out there and being up close with the fans, because you can see he generally likes meeting people who admire him.
All right. So you were talking about the Hulk after Iron Man, and then
and then eventually, Warner Brothers focused on Batman for so long that now we're finally getting what's called the DC Extended Universe on film. But Marvel, especially Marvel Studios, first at Paramount, later at Disney, really got a head start in this race, so to speak. And in a way, they've set the tone, mostly a lighter tone for superhero films. And while it is great to get all these comic book movies, we're now getting at the point where there are so many on film and there's so much on TV that I'm asking questions. I'm almost wondering if studios should just stick to the big guns. And I'm not just saying Batman and Superman, but I'm including, if we're talking the DC side of things, I'm including Wonder Woman, The Flash, and Aquaman in there, and also Green Lantern, which they're eventually going to get to as well. And then at Marvel Studios, we have Captain America, Iron Man, Thor, Hulk, even though they're not putting Hulk in solo movies anymore. But we're getting to the point where starting this year, we're getting 6 to 8 superhero movies per year. And while it's great to see all these things, and as much as I love them, I think I'm being realistic about it when I say that by the end of this decade, the general public could very well be burnt out. And
Yeah.
there are characters who will survive the test of time no matter what, and won't no matter what, they'll always come back. Batman, Superman, Spider-Man. Those guys are always safe no matter what. Even though Spider-Man's last few have kind of been on I think, a decline as far as revenue,
Sure.
box office gross, but Spider-Man, he's been in pop culture since the 60s. He's always going to be here, and no matter what his box office taken is in America, he's huge internationally. Iron
Yes.
Man, I may have said this on this show before, the litmus test for him is how the public reacts to the next actor to play him.
What, Iron Man?
Yeah, because everyone sees him as Robert Downey Jr., and his longevity in pop culture is there's a lot riding on the next man who plays Tony Stark. I'll say that.
I'll tell you what. I mean, they've been picking. Doctor Strange with Cumberbatch is. I think they can do it. I mean, look at what Ben Affleck did for Batman. I mean, I think you and I both agree. Like Christian Bale he's like one of the elite actors out there, and he was great as Batman. But Affleck was, to me, Affleck was Batman. I
Yeah,
could live with Affleck as Batman forever because
yeah.
he just hits it.
Affleck was the Batman ripped right out of the comic books, and I don't know if you got to hear, and it was just announced yesterday, I think. So we'll mention it here on the show. Warner Brothers has added to their slate 2 more DC films, but they're unnamed. One is for like November 2018, and the other is for March 2019 or 2019, something like that. But it's early 2019, I believe. And I'm saying they're the easy choices. We already know Ben
Yeah.
Affleck is working on a solo Batman movie with Jeff Johns. So I'm thinking that late 2018 one is Batman, because Batman's always a safe bet for Warner Brothers. And even people who didn't like Batman versus Superman said Affleck was good as the character. And considering I think the movie probably already has like a rough draft, so anything that's farther along is probably the safe bet as filling that slot. The other I'm saying is Suicide Squad 2, which we've heard Warner Brothers is keen on developing. They just want to see how the first movie does, obviously. But
All right. So I guess what I'm thinking is yeah, they to recast Tony Stark is a big endeavor because he's perfect. He's probably one of the best cast superhero characters ever. But I think it's encouraging to just look around and see how well these characters have been cast in so many movies. So I'm thinking they might be able to like, find somebody that can fill those shoes, Robert Downey's shoes.
yeah, and what we're getting at here, and it leads into these movies needing to take risks, and I don't mean to get started on a subtopic, is that we're getting to the point where just because we can make so many superhero movies doesn't mean we need to give everyone a movie. Like, did Ant-Man really need a movie? I say no. Although Booster Gold's not part of DC's slate, at least yet, people are like, oh man, we need a Booster Gold or Booster Gold Blue Beetle movie. Do we really? And I just finished before we got on there watching the latest episode of Legends of Tomorrow, which I say is technically a show that doesn't need to exist. I mean, it's had good episodes, but it's had a lot of mediocre ones, in my opinion. And a lot of times I watch it just to keep up with, because the fact that it's in a universe with the Flash and Arrow, and I love those shows, so I don't want to feel like I missed out on something. But yeah, it's a B and C list Justice League that they try to Doctor Who a little too much, and at times it
Oh,
doesn't even
nice.
really feel like a superhero show.
Hmm. Doctor Who. Is that what they're going to have to do with these superhero movies? You know, as actors get older.
I don't know. It's and really the only reason Legends exists is because the CW wanted another DC show. They passed on Supergirl and they said they regret it. But yeah, had they not passed on Supergirl, I think that Legends probably wouldn't even exist at all. So you see, they just took, for the most part, characters they had already established on Arrow and the Flash, because there's no way someone like the Atom or Rip Hunter would sustain their own TV show. I mean, it doesn't. I mean, the Atom doesn't really ever have an ongoing series for that long in comics. So what we're kind of getting at here is, with so many of these in the public consciousness, so many superhero movies, a lot of them get a bit formulaic. I mean, you know, the hero's going to win, and with a lot of them live within a comfort zone, and with 6 to 8 of these per year, they're going to have to start taking risks. And something both Brian and I liked about Batman versus Superman, not to go into something long-winded about that movie, because Josh and I reviewed it in our previous episode, was the risk of killing Superman.
Right.
They did it in the comics, and even if people didn't read the comics, you saw at the end of the movie that he's going to come back. He'll be in Justice League.
Sure.
But people who read the comics, they know the whole deal. But I was very surprised in The Dark Knight Rises that they broke Batman's back.
Right.
I was even more shocked that they had the guts to go through with killing Superman in this. And that's not to say superhero movies need to start killing their heroes, because not every movie needs to do it. I mean, they've been killing villains since damn near the get-go. I mean, look back. It's not just Michael Keaton's Batman who would strap bombs to a fat guy and smile about it. I mean, look back at Superman 2 with Christopher Reeve, and I don't care if people say, oh, in the TV cut, Arctic police showed up to arrest Zod, Nan, and Ursa. If it didn't happen in the theatrical cut, it's not canonical. I'll always stand by that. And let's face it, Superman and Lois Lane killed those Kryptonians and smiled about it.
Yeah, but yeah, in a PG way, right?
Yeah.
The principle's there, though. I can see that.
Yeah, and then especially Tim Burton's Batman, and I know Tim Burton said he didn't want the Joker to come back and get watered down like Freddy and Jason, but Batman '89 really established this tone and trend for killing off villains in movies, and
right.
You know, we saw it, you know, even in Sam Raimi's Spider-Man with killing the Green Goblin, and X-Men, you know, took the brave move of keeping Magneto alive, though that franchise has really overused Magneto in a sense, to where, you know, they're finally using Apocalypse and hopefully Mr. Sinister eventually. But yeah, it's come a time where we need to start really rethinking these movies and breaking the mold. And before we get further into this topic, would you like to elaborate on what you liked about Batman versus Superman actually going through with the death of Superman?
The death of Superman, that was it moved me, and the whole context of, I love the whole philosophy or theology of God and man, and the whole issue of people's view of Superman in there. I love getting into that philosophical reality of if we really had this Superman that was walking the earth. And so to do all that before, and set up, and then all of a sudden have him sacrificially die was I thought it worked, and it was dramatic. It had I mean, I did wonder while he's flying like several miles holding this kryptonite staff or in his hand flying across, that why he's able to do that when, you know, puffs of kryptonite smoke were knocking him to his knees. But I just didn't let that bother me. I just, like, you know, he was, his will and determination overpowered it, and he was able to do it fine. So I kind of went with it, and yeah, I thought it paid off. I mean, the scene where he's in the court, and I think that comes from the comic series Kingdom Come, that kind of concept where the bomb goes off. Am I
I
correct in
think
that?
so. It's been a long time since I've read Kingdom Come, and I actually do have my copy signed by Mark Waid, but yeah,
Nice.
it's been years.
Well, one of the things I remembered from Kingdom Come was this to me was just a brilliant idea that if, and I don't know if in Kingdom Come they did this, but they sure didn't do it in the movie to this degree, but the idea that Superman is in some city or town, and it gets, but if it were to get hit by a nuclear bomb, he would just be standing there, and there would just be, you know, this camera angle from above, nothing but death and desolation for miles, and then he's just standing there. And they kind of tapped into that when they in this movie. So I kind of thought they could have like added another scene to give you like an even bigger perspective on what just happened.
Yeah.
But I enjoyed more of what they did. They did a lot right, and I enjoyed what they did right. I am disappointed though that Superman dies twice and comes back, because in the end you get the, you know, you get the tease of, okay, of course he's not dead, but why do they got to show you that at the end? I mean, let him be dead for that movie, because that was the point. You know, that he gave his life up to stop this unstoppable beast. So
Now, I kind of think they had to do that as a nod for the people who didn't read the comics, because if people thought Superman was definitively dead, I think there would have been a different outcry for other reasons.
you might be right, but I would have been happier with just dealing with the fact that he was dead, because that was the point. That was the drama. You know, he came back from being in space and looking at least extremely dead. And yet here, just let the movie end, and deal with that later. I would have enjoyed it better, but it still moved me when he, and I guess it
Oh,
is bold.
the shot in space, he technically wasn't dead.
Sure.
That was a nod to the Dark Knight Returns, when he was near a nuclear explosion, and then he withered, and it was like the power of the Earth that brought him back.
The
So
sun,
yeah,
yeah, the power of the sun. No, but he looks, you know, like he's pretty dead, and then he revives. So it has that same kind of feeling,
yeah.
you know, not as dramatic. So at least the doomsday, and to see the Trinity at work was, it was kind of nice to see them fighting together.
Yeah, some people complain about Superman's depiction in this and Man of Steel, and I just find it to be more. I don't find Superman to be dark in these movies. I find it to be just more realistic, because I think this is how Superman would be in the real world. Because I'll always say that if we live in a world where some people are pretty much worshipped because they score touchdowns, or because
All
they made
right.
a certain movie, or how they look on a magazine cover, imagine how people would react to Superman.
Sure. I
And
mean,
that,
Mother Teresa had people who hated, or, you know, had people that dogged her. I mean, if you got that in our world, then, you know, Superman is involved in so much controversial, you know, destruction, and, you know, yeah, he's gonna have haters for sure.
yeah, it was just entirely realistic from haters and to the people who kind of already saw him as a godlike figure.
Right. Yeah, I enjoyed
But
that a lot.
as we go forward, we have Captain America: Civil War coming out in May, and we're getting to the point where people who are familiar with the comics are really wondering if they're going to pull the trigger on Steve Rogers.
Yeah, I
And
don't know. Or what are they going to do with Spider-Man too?
as and another thing that leads to, not only is this a point in a storyline comparable to comics where Steve Rogers could get killed, Chris Evans' contract as Captain America is also coming to an end. And he long said that he wouldn't renew it, but now he's like, oh, I'd do more. But historically, actors also say stuff like that as misdirection when they know they're getting
Oh,
killed.
sure.
Because I think when The Dark Knight was coming out, Aaron Eckhart was like, oh yeah, I'd play Harvey Dent again. I swear he said it. And then, of course, Harvey Dent dies at the end of the movie.
Nice.
Um,
So
but
I'm curious. Okay, the premise of this topic is interesting to me. So that comic book movies need to take more risks. So the
yeah,
success of comic book movies that we at least are able to enjoy now are built on some of these risks that you laid out in the beginning.
yeah,
What is it that give me some ideas on this? What is a
yeah,
good risk they need to take? Or
I'm going to lay out some ideas. And first, I'm going to talk about deaths of characters and then get deeper. Killing Captain America will prove that Marvel does have the guts to pull a trigger on a hero. And I'm not counting Quicksilver because he was killed in the same movie he was introduced in.
exactly right, big difference, right?
So yeah, it wasn't as impactful. Plus, there's a much cooler Quicksilver over in the X-Men movies anyway, and I
Oh
think
yeah.
that was I think they just didn't want to avoid all the confusion, and I think that played a part in why they killed him off. But we
Maybe.
saw Shield get dismantled in Captain America: The Winter Soldier, and that was one of the biggest things to happen in a Marvel movie. But I think we're not going to try to make this, anti-Disney or anything. But I think that Disney having taken over the Marvel franchise has led to them kind of being in a safe zone where these movies have gotten kind of comfortable in what they do, going by a certain formula where killing characters is one of the first steps. I mean, don't kill everyone. This is an ultimatum
Yeah.
from people who read that event in the Ultimate Marvel universe where they just killed so many people. I'm not saying do that. But yeah,
Heck no.
showing that they have the willingness to take the step that's already the natural progression of saying, hey, Steve Rogers can die. And if it doesn't happen in Civil War, maybe it's going to happen in Avengers Infinity War because, hey,
Who's doing what's the next movie Josh Whedon's doing?
Joss Whedon, he's done with Marvel.
He's not doing any more Avengers, or
No.
okay.
The Russo brothers who directed Captain America, The Winter Soldier, and Civil War, they're doing Avengers Infinity War.
Okay.
Um,
He probably will
so
be putting he'll have some input, I would think. And if that's the case, then we know that they're going to be doing this kind of a risk, because Josh Whedon knows how to do Shakespeare. He knows how to take a superhero story and give it a Shakespearean depth. So
but
not
with
not that the
Infinity War,
Avengers had that Shakespearean depth, but he's done it in writing comics and other media as well.
with Infinity War having, with it being a two-parter, Steve Rogers could easily die in that. But he's already got a successor in Bucky Barnes, who, became Captain America when Steve died in the comics, or quote unquote died. Um, but there are other things I think we need to explore, different tones and ways we can do a superhero movie. Like, I think Wonder Woman, obviously it's not a movie we've seen yet, but we know it's going to explore Themyscira. It takes place in World War One, so we can incorporate that wartime, that feel. We kind of saw that in Captain America: The First Avenger, but in future Wonder Woman movies, we can also get into her interacting with gods and stuff.
Mm.
Aquaman can be much different because it's dealing with Atlantis and anything else down there. I've always thought that Aquaman could almost be like Clash of the Titans underwater.
Nice, nice.
It, and they've got James Wan directing, who knows what to do with action movies, and he's
Yeah.
done horror movies like Saw and Insidious, and he knows how to get to the core of a character, I think, and that's why I'm excited to see what he does with Aquaman. But recently I've I don't think they'll do this with Cyborg, and this is my own idea, but recently I reviewed a Cyborg trade paperback, and I was thinking about his abilities and how he can interface with any piece of technology on the planet. And granted,
Sure.
he's a little powered up for this stuff, but it would also work as a comic book. But wouldn't it be cool to see if Cyborg ran Black Ops missions or something? Like, I'm a
I
big fan
see.
of the Splinter Cell games, but to see him go into dangerous territories that would, be a little less dangerous for him, but to aggressively collect things. But I mean, we're just throwing ideas at a wall here, but there's certain characters that they can really change up the formula, and
Well, you
Doctor.
had, oh, you were going to talking about Doctor, before you get into Doctor Strange, right? Is that what you were going to say?
Yeah. Well,
You
what
were,
were you gonna say
well,
before?
you touched in on something that I think is core to this. And I think you had mentioned the director of Aquaman. I forget his name. What's his name?
James Wan.
Right. And that seems to be the kind of moves that are necessary. So a couple moves that Marvel made that I thought, for whatever reason they fell apart, bothered me, was Ant-Man was supposed to be directed by Edgar Wright. I'm a huge Edgar Wright fan. And I think that's like, sure, I'm sure I haven't seen Ant-Man yet, but I'm sure it's a fine movie, but it's in the same mold. Edgar Wright would have done a great movie. Maybe it wouldn't have been cutting edge, out totally outside, but who they get to direct it? How about the director Aronofsky of Black Swan or Requiem for a Dream, or that he was slated to direct, I think, Wolverine, and then he was slated to direct another Marvel movie.
He was supposed to do Batman Year One, and this was before
Oh,
Batman Begins, but he and Frank Miller didn't see eye to eye, and it turned
of
out
course they wouldn't.
no, it actually turned out Darren Aronofsky's Batman was going to be way more violent than Frank Miller's, and it was going to be R-rated, and Warner Brothers ultimately didn't want an R-rated Batman movie.
Well, that is a risk because it could not, it could be a failure, but Aronofsky was, I heard, twice going to maybe do a movie. And so my point is in saying this is only like, well, maybe they kind of need to do, maybe they need to do that where they have someone like an Aronofsky make, because he's not going to make your cookie cutter superhero movie. You know that, and it might not work, but it definitely is a risk, I think, worth taking.
Yeah, DC, Warner Brothers with their DC movie is, even though they're building a connected universe, they're saying they're making theirs more filmmaker driven, and Suicide Squad really looks to be David Ayer's baby, and I really have a feeling that movie's going to be something special.
I hope so. It does look, it does look impressive, but you can never tell. It's going to be interesting. When is that coming out again?
August 5th.
Okay, and then what about Doctor Strange? What were you going to say about that?
Yeah, that's November, and obviously we don't know. Well, a trailer's coming next week, but
Sweet.
um, I'm hoping they really play up the mysticism side of it and
Yes,
make
yes.
make it, even though it's within the Marvel universe, I hope it's much more of a fantasy movie, because I'm not really familiar with Doctor Strange in the comics outside of maybe team ups and events, but I own the animated movie. And if you haven't checked that out, or anyone listening, check out the Doctor Strange animated movie that came out in 2007 when Marvel was still doing animated movies through Lionsgate, and it's really good. It is more of a movie that focuses on mysticism. It's not quite a superhero movie. I mean, it has the hero's journey as you would know it, um, but it's probably a very good primer on the character if you don't have the time to pick up some comics before the movie comes out. Just uh, sit through this 75, 80-minute movie.
I'm gonna make a prediction that what you were saying when they cast Iron Man, Downey Jr. as Tony Stark, that worked. The fact that they put Cumberbatch as Doctor Strange tells me that you might get the movie you're hoping for, because if you're familiar with Cumberbatch's acting career, man, that guy is in, you know, insanely good and able to just play a very eccentric character to something straight. And so I think that just from that, I'm going to go with it. They probably are going to do this one right, and it's gonna be a good movie. So
Yeah, and then other things on Marvel's slate. There's there's some where I'm wondering how much different can they do, because I mean Captain Marvel, it's a female superhero, but I think that's going to be, you know, the same cookie cutter type of thing. Black Panther, I mean, I know he's introduced in Captain America Civil War, but in his own movie, if you do it right, that's one I can see standing out from the rest of the pack, because especially try to capture his life in Wakanda, the life of a prince,
yes,
what it is to carry the weight of I
yeah,
mean, it's a small country, but what's it like to carry that on your shoulders?
yeah,
And a country that's a bit isolationist, I think there's a lot they can do with that. But I mean, and when they finally let Green Lantern back onto the screen with Green Lantern Corps in 2020, just I don't care if the Green Lantern movie doesn't spend a second on Earth. They need to show
yes, right.
why Green Lantern, and I still I don't hate the Green Lantern movie that existed. I I actually thought it was pretty decent, but we're not here to review Green Lantern because we only have so much time. But what they need to do is spend more time in space,
Sure.
and also not overdo it with showing too many of the aliens from the core, because there's only so much you can do on a CGI budget. But you can at least do Kilowog and a few others that are central to Green Lantern mythology and really polish that CGI. But make it about those Earth Lanterns like Hal Jordan, John Stewart, or whoever else they decide to use in this movie. But almost make it like buddy cops in space. But take those Earth guys, have those Earth guys, and that's our only connection to Earth. But have them explore the cosmos.
Yeah,
The
space
red,
movie. Exactly.
yeah, the Red Lantern Corps. I mean, the comic book community instantaneously pretty much fell in love with them, and I think the mainstream could as well. I mean, they're just some cool looking villains. I mean, their power comes from rage. There's a
Right.
lot they could do with that. And, I think because they're rebooting Green Lantern, unfortunately, we might not see the fall of Sinestro. Um,
Hmm.
but if you're going to use anything, hey, Red Lantern Corps, that's the way to go. They're, but I mean, we're mostly just talking about superhero movies here, but there are ways. I mean, Warner Brothers also has that Vertigo well to tap. I mean, there's obviously Sandman, which now has hit a bump since Joseph Gordon-Levitt has dropped out of that.
Really?
But there are other even currently ongoing Vertigo properties to tap. I mean, Jacked, which is 5 of 6 issues of that many have shipped, but it's from Supernatural creator Eric Kripke, and it's essentially a middle-aged guy pops a pill, gets superpowers, but it's very real world. It's funny, it's dramatic, it's violent.
Right.
That could almost be something in the vein of Kick-Ass if Warner
Exactly.
Brothers wants to tap, and that's that's borderline still a superhero movie, because some people still considered Kick-Ass to be a superhero movie.
Oh yeah. I mean, yeah. Obviously, it's not your conventional superhero, but I mean, it's all superhero, and it's not it's not completely realistic that this kid would get pulverized, and then I mean, if in the real world, if someone got as pulverized as he did in the comics, especially, you would be for the rest of your life, you would have issues on just walking straight. And so, yeah, I give it a superhero rating because it's got an edgy, realistic feel to it, but it's definitely not completely realistic too. So,
Yeah, and maybe it's time also for, when we're talking about the big guns, Batman and Superman, pull even more from the comics. Because when you read comic book story arcs or even watch some of the animated movies, those don't necessarily play out like the typical superhero movie. I mean, like what remains my favorite Batman animated movie to this, at least as to the point of the time we're doing this episode, is Batman Under the Red Hood.
Right.
Um,
Good.
that had kind of like a bittersweet, tragic ending. And, with the ending on the flashback of young Jason saying, "This is the best day of my life." And I just think, poor Bruce and what that man has to endure. But, though we've fallen into this comfort zone that, it's a risk to take, but sometimes, I mean, The Dark Knight did it with Batman, letting his name get dragged through
Nice.
the mud so his city could survive.
That was good.
But yeah, personally, I'm not opposed to Batman movies having bittersweet endings, because this happens in other genres. It happens in horror movies and other sci-fi films, bleak sci-fi films of the 70s and stuff.
Yeah, especially with the Marvel universe being so saturated with different characters having their own movies. Okay, well, yeah, and we know in comics characters die, but they don't stay dead. In the movies, I think we can have some legit characters where we can have some serious weight to their lives, and you wonder if they are going to make it. I mean, look at the success of The Walking Dead, which is probably one of the greatest comic book franchises to exist. Why? Because yeah, the production value is great, but the reason is because of the writing. The reason is because you don't know who is going to live. Anyone can die, and so we need to have that. That's the risk. That's ultimately the risk that Marvel should be taking. And if they have a game plan for all these movies connecting, and they're connecting parts, and these individual stories coming to a climax, I hope they're thinking it through, and I hope it does have the payoff that, maybe the payoff of some kind of a risk that might work out.
Yeah, and there are other certain risks that don't have to be taken. Like we've heard, after Infinity War, the Avengers lineup will have a big shakeup, but have some familiar faces in there. Have a Captain America, whether it's Bucky or Falcon. But
sure,
over at DC, we talk about the Trinity: Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman, but the Trinity at Marvel is Iron Man, Captain America, and Thor. Granted, Spider-Man and Wolverine are arguably some of the most popular, but we're talking Captain America, Iron Man, and Thor are historically the three central characters to the Avengers throughout history.
Right.
And, in Marvel crossover events. But don't have it to where it's like at the end of Captain America Winter Soldier, don't eventually give us an Avengers movie that's, Falcon, War Machine, Scarlet Witch, and the Vision. That's not a risk we want. Conversely, before the New 52, when the Justice League essentially became the Titans grown up, I mean, it was cool to see the Dick Grayson Batman in the Justice League, but the other people in there were like Donna Troy, I think Cyborg, who is now actually a member of the Justice League. But yeah, it was all people who were in the Teen Titans when they were young. Yeah, it's not like we don't want a Justice League that is, sidekicks grown up.
I didn't see Deadpool yet, but was Deadpool, did you see it, and was that a risk? Because for everything I know about it, it was a complete risk.
I still haven't seen it. I was supposed to see it on opening weekend, and someone canceled on me, and I'll be seeing it soon. I will, yes. But I mean,
what we know about it, I mean, is that kind of that seems to be like a great example of a risk.
Yeah, that doesn't mean every movie has to be have jokes, and have the same tone. But yeah, everyone said Deadpool was something different. And, we're running near the end of the show here, but, these are fans talking, you and I, and hopefully this is starting to stir the minds of people at home. But for the people who are spending hundreds of millions of dollars on this in Hollywood. And when people eventually start to say, hey, we're getting tired of too many superhero movies, these are conversations that need to happen in Hollywood in a creative sense. Like, sorry, again, this comes back to killing a character, but maybe when we get that solo Ben Affleck Batman movie, it'll be a prequel, and we'll get to see how that Robin died because we saw the costume in the cave.
I would think so. I would think so, because otherwise you don't have as much drama for the point of those scenes unless they flesh it out.
Yeah, so much has happened with Batman that we're not in the 90s where Batman Forever, Batman and Robin, which were rather formulaic. There's no reason for Batman movies to be formulaic at all.
Sure.
Even if they ever had to do straight up adaptations of comic books, which they don't do really for live action movies, they do it for animated. They could always do that.
Yeah, how about an epic animation major motion picture movie? In fact, I was thinking Secret Wars, what I grew up with, the original Secret Wars.
Well,
I would thinking they might do that.
Batman Mask of the Phantasm flopped when it was in theaters in like 93, and that's still regarded to be one of the best Batman movies, period.
But we have Incredibles and stuff, and I know that's not, I mean, it's close enough to where you could have something Disney. Come on, we're talking Disney here.
There is an animated Spider-Man movie coming to theaters in 2018.
Oh, I did not hear that.
Yeah, it's outside the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
Good.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that because
who's doing that?
I think it's being written by some of the guys who did the Lego movie.
But is it Marvel?
Yeah. Well,
okay.
It's still distributed by Sony, but I think Marvel Studios has a hand in it. But in animation, you can do things you can never do in live action because all you have to do is draw it.
Yes.
But also when you're in animation, you're still on a budget.
Sure.
But now think of what they can animate with a big screen budget.
Well, did you see Tintin, the movie?
No.
Well, that's Spielberg, one of the greatest directors to live. And, live action. Guy knows how to do action better than anyone. And his first animated movie was Tintin. If you want to see, like, imagine you give Spielberg the ability to do action where he's not constrained to having to have camera rigs and, lighting. And so he can do action with his imagination. And so Tintin it was well worth it yeah, like you said, man, you can go in and you can do a superhero movie, a major motion picture action with beautiful animation.
It's like I'm a big fan of the Arkham series of Batman games, and to me, it's like Arkham City is the best Batman movie that's not a movie.
Sure.
Those games just get to the core of Batman and his characters, and they're such an immersive experience to the point where I used to have dreams that I was in Arkham City and stuff, and and I'm gliding and stuff because in my dreams actually all 5 of my senses function.
Yeah.
So I actually do have the power of flight in my dreams too. I'm almost like Neo in the Matrix, but when I fly in dreams, I can actually feel wind whipping by me.
Really?
So,
wow. That's
yeah.
Yeah, I've never tried to influence my dreams, I've heard that can be done to where you can kind of.
If it's a false reality, once you realize it's a false reality, you either wake up or you can manipulate it. But that's how it's done. And though on that note, it's also sometimes my brain likes to drop me in Silent Hill in my dreams. So if you've played those games or seen those movies, if you're someone and all your senses function in dreams, Silent Hill it's not a place you want to be.
No.
But yeah, we're kind of running near the end of the show, so we at least hope that we gave some good points to people who tuned in for this main topic. I was going to say, even though it's not a superhero movie, something from Vertigo that I think would work really well as a movie or like an HBO miniseries. It's currently ongoing, as Sheriff of Babylon, about Tom King's time in Baghdad after the fall of Saddam, where he was a cop. And
Wow, that sounds good.
it's in a war-torn area, but it's not a war story. It's about a guy carrying out murder investigations in Baghdad during that era. So you get the politics of it all and everything, and how people react to each other that have to cross cultural barriers. That it's a very top-notch series, and that's waiting for a live-action adaptation. But yeah, there are lots of superhero stories that are ripe for adaptation. I mean, Superman certainly has gotten very science fiction in the comics, and let's face it, outside of Luthor, Zod, and well, now Doomsday, they haven't even gone past the tip of the iceberg of what they can do with Superman. We
Sure.
still
I
have to
mean,
see Brainiac. We're getting Darks. We're pretty sure we're getting Darkseid in Justice League, which I'm excited about. I mean,
so you're hopeful for the Justice League then?
yeah.
Okay. Because yeah, I think a lot of people with this last movie, so many haters. I don't know. They were. It seems like that could be another decisive or movie that splits the people.
Well, Justice League goes into production on Monday, so it's coming.
It's coming. Yeah.
But any closing thoughts you have regarding the main topic before we sign off?
No, no. I still. I guess I do. I could just say I'm still. I have kids. I grew up artist, comic fan, and just loving comics. The actual media, the original comics, I love, and to to take for granted the reality that we have too many comic book movies, maybe is the problem. I think is it's a good problem to have, considering. I mean, think about it. Pretty much, Marvel has been pretty solid with good movies, even if they're not cutting edge or, they have a certain kind of a mold. It's great, fun entertainment. And so I just don't want to take that too for granted. But at the same time, you can only handle so much. They just can't they can't expect to keep people's interest and keep throwing them at us. So that's why I do like this topic. But I try not to take it for granted. It's a lot of good fun.
Yeah, and again, I'll thank you for being on the show. And it's not just to talk about your work; it's always fun to, just have two geeks talking about stuff they love.
I was great to be back.
And perhaps we'll have you on again in the future, sometime after issue 1 ships and whatever your creative endeavors are.
Yeah, that would be awesome.
We always welcome our guests back. But any closing words overall before we get out of here?
Yeah, well, anybody check out the Kickstarter if you're into quality art and independent stuff, a story that's different. I get this from a lot of people who I introduced my book to. That this looks different. This is something that's kind of fresh, and it's a big encouragement. So at least take a look. Me and my crew have put a lot of work into it, and I am just putting everything I can into it. I have original music written for it, being a music fan. So there's a couple songs that are also offered through the Kickstarter by a couple bands, Elements of Cadence and a one-man band, Jason Conley. So at least give the Kickstarter a look. Hopefully we can perk your curiosity with how beautiful the art looks. And the concept has a kind of a fresh sci-fi classic look to it.
All right, and before I close, I'm going to plug our sites. for all the latest Batman news across all forms of media and just a litany of reviews each week from me and my colleagues. Check out darkknightnews.com for all the latest DC news across all forms of media. Check out dccomicsnews.com for our entire backlog of podcasts and sometimes other miscellanea. Check out our blog site at multiverseentertainment.wordpress.com. And although it's not affiliated with this podcast, check out wegotThiscovered.com. It's a great entertainment site that I also write for. And since Josh and I appear, almost regularly now on their live stream, check out our good friends over at culturejunkies.net. And be sure to like us on Facebook at facebook.com/a podcast for all seasons. So hopefully,
and I forgot to mention Staunch Ambition is the name of the comic. So,
Josh and I will hopefully be back soon, maybe talking comics. But as I said, we have Midwest Media Expo next weekend, though we will return at some point to obviously review Captain America: Civil War. So until next time, thanks for listening and goodbye.
bye.